All right, everyone, get ready, because today we are going deep into a case that has the internet going crazy,
Hmm.
and to be honest, it kind of makes me sick to my stomach.
Yeah.
We're talking about Adriana Orme and Holly Gresley, those lovely ladies who thought torturing monkeys was a fun way to spend their time.
Right.
And our source material today is coming straight from the depths of the internet, specifically a Kiwi Farms forum thread titled, and get this, Zoosadist million pity baby monkey hate Eurochan.life million tears evil unveiled vidly.
Wow. That's quite a name, isn't it? But don't let the name fool ya. This thread is absolutely packed with disturbing details about their crimes and the online community's reaction to their sentencing.
Oh, it's definitely not for the faint of heart. But you know what? I have to say, after reading through all those forum posts, there is a definite sense of satisfaction.
I can imagine.
Finally, some justice is done, but I hope that it's just a start.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of users on the forum share that sentiment. There's this very real sense of relief, even vindication now that Orme and Gresley are facing consequences.
It's about time. It's sickening to think they were out there probably sipping lattes and posting selfies while those poor monkeys suffered.
Yeah, I can see why people are so upset.
And let's give a huge shout out to True and Honest Fan on the forum for keeping everyone updated on this twisted saga.
Absolutely.
Talk about a digital detective. They have been all over this case, compiling evidence and making sure these women didn't slip through the cracks.
Their dedication is truly remarkable. It really shows the power of online communities in cases like this.
Totally agree. It's like a modern-day posse rounding up the bad guys. Right. Except instead of horses and lassos, it's keyboards and screenshots.
The very 21st century approach to justice.
Right.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves here. These women are facing jail time, but a lot of people on the forum are arguing it's not enough.
No, I'm right there with them. Orme got 24 months and Gresley got 15. I mean, seriously. That hardly seems like a fitting punishment for the level of cruelty they inflicted.
Yeah, I can see how people would feel that way.
It's almost insulting,
A lot of users are expressing that same sentiment. There's a lot of anger and frustration. Some people are even comparing the leniency of these sentences to those given for far less heinous crimes.
Yeah, I saw a comment comparing it to sentences for, well, let's just say crimes against humans that are far less acceptable to joke about.
Right.
And you know what? They have a point. It makes you wonder about the priorities of the legal system when it comes to protecting the vulnerable, whether they walk on two legs or four.
That's a powerful observation, and it definitely speaks to a larger discussion about how society values animal welfare and whether our legal systems adequately reflect that.
But back to these, and I'm using the term loosely, ladies. I read that they were crying and carrying on in court.
Oh, really?
Please, someone pass the world's smallest violin.
I saw some forum users picked up on that too. There's a general consensus that it was all a performance, like a desperate attempt to garner sympathy and maybe get a lighter sentence.
I'm sure they were truly heartbroken that they got caught.
Right.
Crocodile tears.
Yeah. Cynical but understandable given the circumstances. Remember, we're dealing with individuals who reveled in the suffering of helpless creatures. It's hard to imagine genuine remorse from people capable of such cruelty.
Exactly. And this brings me to a comment that really stuck with me from a user called Nager Psychologue.
Oh, okay.
They pointed out that these women showed zero remorse until they were caught even bragging about having diplomas in monkey hate.
Wow.
I mean, what kind of a sick joke is that?
It's chilling, isn't it? It raises the question, are these expressions of remorse we see in court genuine? Or are they simply a calculated tactic for self-preservation?
Tough question, but I'm leaning towards the latter. It's like they suddenly discovered empathy when they realized their freedom was on the line.
Convenient, right?
Very. But thankfully, their crocodile tears didn't seem to sway the judge.
Thank goodness for small mercies.
Yes.
But what's really got the forum fired up is the discussion around whether animal abusers are getting off too easily compared to other criminals.
And I have to say, after reading some of those arguments, I'm starting to think they might have a point.
What are some of the arguments that stand out to you?
Well, there's this user, Teo Lei, who's drawing direct comparisons between sentences for animal cruelty and those for crimes against humans,
Interesting.
arguing that there's a disturbing disparity.
It's a bold statement for sure.
It is.
But when you consider the emotional and physical trauma inflicted on these animals, it does make you wonder.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then we have another user, Bickman's Modeling Agency, who goes even further, suggesting that even human children aren't adequately protected by the legal system.
Wow.
Oof, that's a heavy one.
Yeah.
But their point is, if the system struggles to protect humans, what hope do animals have? It paints a pretty grim picture.
A grim picture indeed. But it's a perspective worth considering as we delve deeper into this case, the broader issues it raises.
Yeah.
So let's unpack this a bit further, shall we?
Let's do it, because I have a feeling this conversation is just getting started.
So, one of the things that really stood out to me reading through these forum posts was the sheer outrage at the sentences.
Oh, yeah.
Like, for a lot of people, anything less than these women rotting in a cell for the rest of their days just doesn't feel like justice.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah?
I think there's this real sense that the punishment should fit the crime. And in this case, a couple of years behind bars just doesn't cut it.
Right.
It just feels like a slap on the wrist for the level of depravity we're talking about.
And, it raises this question, do our current legal systems even, adequately reflect the severity of animal cruelty crimes?
Yeah.
Because if 15 months is all it takes to get away with systematically torturing innocent creatures, then something is seriously wrong.
Yeah, you're calling to the choir here.
Yeah.
Think about it. If these women had committed similar acts against humans,
Right.
the outrage would be deafening and the sentences would be far more severe.
Of course.
But because the victims were animals, it feels like the justice system is turning a blind eye.
And that's exactly the point that many of the forum users are making. They're drawing parallels between animal cruelty and other forms of violence,
Yeah.
and arguing that the legal system needs to take a more consistent and uncompromising stance against all forms of abuse.
It's like they're saying a victim is a victim regardless of species. And honestly, I'm inclined to agree.
Yeah, it's a compelling argument, and one that deserves serious consideration. Because if we truly believe in a just and compassionate society, then we need to ensure that justice extends to all living beings,
Right.
not just the ones who happen to be human.
Couldn't agree more. And I think this case is forcing a lot of people to confront some uncomfortable truths about how we as a society view and treat animals.
Yeah,
It's like a mirror reflecting back some pretty ugly aspects of ourselves.
and those reflections can be jarring because for a lot of people, animals are still seen as property commodities to be exploited for our own benefit.
Right.
But, the outrage over this case suggests that those attitudes might be shifting.
Here's hoping. I mean, it's 2024 for crying out loud. You'd think we would have evolved beyond seeing animals as mere objects.
Well, progress can be slow, especially when it comes to challenging deeply ingrained beliefs.
Yeah.
But I do think this case is a sign that the tide is turning.
Okay.
The fact that so many people are demanding justice for these monkeys shows that there's a growing recognition of their inherent worth and right to a life free from cruelty.
It's definitely a conversation that needs to happen because at the end of the day, this isn't just about a couple of messed up women and some unfortunate monkeys.
No.
This is about our collective responsibility to protect the vulnerable and create a world where all living beings are treated with dignity and respect.
Well said. And I think the forum users who have been so vocal about this case deserve credit for shining a light on this important issue.
Absolutely. They might not be wearing capes and tights,
Right.
but they're heroes in my book.
And their efforts have not gone unnoticed. This case has gained significant media attention, and it's sparked a broader conversation about animal cruelty and the need for stronger legal protections.
That's what I like to hear, because sometimes it takes a truly horrific case like this to shake things up and force us to confront the ugly truths we'd rather ignore.
Indeed, and while the sentences might not feel like enough, I do believe that this case will have a lasting impact.
Okay.
It's raised awareness, fueled activism, and hopefully it will serve as a catalyst for meaningful legal reform.
Fingers crossed, because if there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that no animal should ever have to endure the kind of suffering that those monkeys went through.
Absolutely. And that brings us to an interesting point raised by several forum users, the question of how we prevent this kind of cruelty from happening in the first place.
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? I mean, punishing the perpetrators is important,
Sure.
but it doesn't really address the root of the problem.
Exactly, and there's no easy answer. But the forum users have offered some thought-provoking suggestions.
Oh, really? Like what?
Some advocate for stricter laws and harsher penalties, while others believe that education and fostering empathy are key.
I think it's going to take a multifaceted approach, that's for sure. We need to tackle this problem from all angles.
I agree.
Stronger laws, increased public awareness,
Right.
and maybe even a little dose of karma wouldn't hurt.
Well, speaking of karma, let's circle back to the forum's reaction to Orme and Gresley's behavior in court.
Mm-hmm.
You mentioned the tears and the general skepticism about their remorse.
Oh, yeah, that was pure Oscar-worthy drama right there. I wouldn't be surprised if they practiced those waterworks in front of the mirror.
And it seems that the forum users weren't buying it either. A lot of them saw it as a calculated attempt to manipulate the judge and maybe even the public.
Because nothing says I'm truly sorry like a perfectly timed sob story.
Right. Sarcasm aside, it does raise an interesting question. Can people capable of such cruelty ever truly feel remorse? Or is it all just a performance?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, part of me wants to believe that even the darkest hearts can find redemption.
Yeah.
But then I think about those monkeys and the suffering they endured, and I'm not so sure.
It's a complex issue, and one that psychologists have been grappling with for centuries.
Right.
There's no easy answer.
Maybe some people are just born bad, or maybe they get a taste for cruelty and it becomes an addiction. Who knows?
Whatever the explanation, it's clear that we need to do more to understand the motivations behind animal cruelty and develop effective strategies for prevention and intervention.
Agreed, because ignoring the problem or simply hoping it will go away isn't going to cut it.
Right.
We need to be proactive and take a stand against this kind of abhorrent behavior.
Well said, and I think the passion and outrage we see expressed in the Kiwi Farms forum is a sign that people are no longer willing to tolerate animal cruelty.
It's about time because, as True and Honest Fan so eloquently put it, these monsters deserve to rot.
Strong words, but I suspect many would agree.
Yeah, as we're discussing all of this, I keep coming back to the question of why. Why would anyone find pleasure in inflicting pain on another living being?
It's a question that's haunted philosophers and scientists for ages. There are theories about psychological disorders, power dynamics, and even a twisted sense of entertainment.
It's just mind-boggling to me.
Mhm.
I get a kick out of watching those, fail videos online.
Yeah.
People tripping over their own feet or getting hit in the face with a football.
Mhm.
But that's different.
Yeah.
It's accidental, and no one is getting seriously hurt.
Right. There's a clear distinction between finding humor in the unexpected and deriving pleasure from someone else's suffering.
Exactly, and that's what makes this case so disturbing.
Right.
These women weren't just messing around. They're actively seeking out opportunities to torture and abuse these helpless creatures.
It speaks to a level of sadism it's truly chilling.
And it makes the lenient sentences feel even more like a travesty.
Yeah, it's understandable why so many people are outraged.
For sure.
It feels like the justice system failed those monkeys.
Big time. But, it's not just about the legal ramifications.
Yeah.
There's also a moral dimension to this case that we can't ignore.
Absolutely. This is about recognizing the inherent worth and dignity of all living beings, regardless of their species.
It's about empathy, compassion, and understanding that animals are not just objects for our amusement or exploitation.
Right.
They're sentient creatures capable of experiencing a range of emotions, including fear and pain.
And as a society, we have a moral obligation to protect them from harm.
Couldn't have said it better myself. And I think the fact that this case has sparked such a passionate response is a sign that as a society, we're starting to take that moral obligation more seriously.
Let's hope so, because the animals deserve nothing less.
Preach. So where do we go from here? What are the key takeaways from all of this?
Well, I think one of the most important takeaways is that animal cruelty is a serious issue that demands our attention.
Right.
It's not something we can simply brush aside or ignore.
Right. And we need to stop making excuses for it.
Yes.
Whether it's blaming mental illness,
Yeah.
cultural norms, or just plain ignorance, we need to hold people accountable for their actions.
Absolutely, and we need to challenge the notion that animals are somehow less than humans and therefore deserving of less protection.
It's about time we ditch that antiquated hierarchy and start treating all living beings with the respect they deserve.
Well said. And that means speaking up when we see animals being mistreated, supporting organizations that are working to protect them, and advocating for stronger laws and enforcement.
It's a collective effort. That's for sure. We all have a role to play in creating a more just and compassionate world for all beings, human and animal alike.
And I think the forum users who have been so actively engaged in this case are a testament to that.
Yeah.
They've shown that ordinary people armed with passion and a keyboard can make a difference.
They're proof that outrage can be a powerful catalyst for change, and that's a message we should all take to heart.
Absolutely. So as we wrap up this part of our deep dive, let's shift gears a bit and delve into some of the more specific details of the case,
Right.
particularly the evidence that was presented and the legal arguments that were made.
Ooh, let's get down to the nitty-gritty, because I'm curious to see how all of this played out in the courtroom. We've talked about the forum's reaction, the legal stuff, and the bigger picture. But let's not forget, all of this started with some seriously dedicated internet sleuthing.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, would these women be behind bars without the efforts of those online detectives?
That's a good point. The role of online communities in bringing this case to light is truly remarkable.
Yeah.
Remember those cryptic forum thread titles?
Yeah.
Well, that's not just for show. It's like a glimpse into this whole world of digital investigation where users are like combing through social media chat logs and even dark web forums
No way.
to expose these kinds of horrific acts.
It's like a real-life crime drama, except the heroes are armed with IP addresses and search warrants instead of guns and badges.
Exactly. And their work is often crucial in cases like this, where the perpetrators might otherwise operate under the radar. Traditional law enforcement often lacks the resources or the expertise to really navigate the complex world of online crime, especially when it comes to something as niche as well, monkey torture.
It's a disturbing thought, but a true one. And it's a testament to the power of collective action and the dedication of these online communities that justice was served in this case. They're like digital vigilantes, shining a light into the darkest corners of the internet and holding those who operate there accountable.
And it's not just about exposing the crimes, it's also about creating a sense of community and support for those who are horrified by these acts.
Right.
Like reading through the forum posts, you can just sense the shared outrage, the collective determination to see these abusers brought to justice.
It's like they formed a united front, a virtual army fighting for the voiceless victims of these horrific acts, and you know what, they're winning.
They are indeed, and their victories send a powerful message to other would-be animal abusers. You might think you're operating in the shadows, but the internet never forgets.
Those words should be plastered on billboards everywhere. Let them sweat. Let them know that Big Brother, or in this case, Big Forum, is watching.
Ha ha ha, indeed. But let's not get carried away with the vigilante narrative.
Yeah.
It's important to remember that these communities, while often well-intentioned, can sometimes cross the line.
Sure.
You know, there's a risk of harassment, misinformation, and even vigilantism.
Right. It's a double-edged sword.
Right.
The same tools that can expose criminals can also be used to target innocent individuals.
Exactly.
It's a fine line, and one that these communities need to be mindful of.
Absolutely. But in this particular case, it's undeniable that their efforts played a crucial role in bringing these abusers to justice. And that's something to be celebrated.
For sure. So, as we wrap up our deep dive into this disturbing but ultimately hopeful case, I'm struck by the power of the internet to both amplify the worst and the best of humanity.
It's a strange paradox, isn't it?
It is.
We see the depths of depravity, but we also witness incredible acts of courage, compassion, and a relentless pursuit of justice.
And it's a reminder that we all have a role to play in shaping the online world. Whether it's speaking out against cruelty, supporting those who are fighting for good, or simply being more mindful of our own online behavior, we can all contribute to a more just and compassionate digital space.
Beautifully said, and on that note, we'll leave you with this final thought. Never underestimate the power of your voice, your actions and your choices in making the world, both online and offline, a kinder and more just place for all.
So to sum it all up, Google Presents Kiwi Farms is weird.
Yeah.
It's funny, it's insightful, and it's definitely unlike anything else you'll find on YouTube.
They're a unique voice in the digital world.
They are.
They're definitely worth checking out. Just be prepared for a lot of talk about stretching.
Oh, the stretching is unavoidable. It's part of the experience.
Embrace the stretch.
Well, that's it for our deep dive into the strange and wonderful world of Google Presents Kiwi Farms.
Yes. Go check them out.
Like and subscribe, and let us know what you think.
We'll see you next time.